Hope is like your car keys. Easy to lose, but if you dig around, it's usually close by. Here's your look at the new Hot Toys. This is the Justice League Superman 1/6 scale collectible figure. Expertly crafted based on Henry Cavill's appearance in the movie with astonishing likeness, the Superman collectible figure features newly developed LED light-up head sculpt that accentuates Superman's unique heat vision ability coming from his eyes, as well as an interchangeable newly painted head sculpt, a newly developed muscular body, a finely detailed and meticulously tailored costume with metallic Superman icon on chest, and a specially designed Justice League-themed display figure stand. Before we have a look at the Man of Steel, a long overdue review, it seemed to take forever for this guy to finally ship. First thing we're going to do is figure out how tall he stands. That sounds good, doesn't it? Taking it right to the very top of his head and stopping it right there, according to my trusty tape measure, the somewhat new Justice League Superman stands impressively at 12.5 inches in height. And that, in centimeters, feast your eyes on 31.8. He's a little over 31.5 centimeters tall. Yes, this guy seemed to take eons before he finally arrived. I must have pre-ordered this Justice League Superman probably about 2 years ago, and it kept getting postponed, and kept getting postponed, and kept getting finally postponed, until eventually he was shipped out. Heading on over to Sideshow's website, where I actually did pre-order Superman from, he's back on pre-order yet again. So I don't know what it is specifically about Superman, but this guy has been plagued with delays after delays after delays, unless you bought this one overseas. Anyways, according to what I'm looking at here in front of the camera, let's address the display stand that comes included with Supes. He does come with the same familiar Justice League display stand that we've seen with pretty much all the figures already. The irony about this is when you look at the display stand and then you pull the scene that of course this is taken from. This is the entryway or the exit way out from the Flying Fox. And ironically enough, Superman was not on the rampway, and yet they felt the need to still include the exact same ramp. In fairness, at least it causes a consistent trend that if you had collected all the other Hot Toys figures up to this point, you could at least have them all sort of connected to one another. That would be a very long, wide rampway, but at least the bases would be consistent to one another. I mean, obviously I could find fault to the fact that Superman isn't even in this scene, but I can't think of what else I would have put him with instead. Again, if you want to have the consistency of having all the figures look like they're on the exact same display stand, then yes, it makes logical sense that they would have included this stand. I'm just nitpicking. You have the raised elevated placard there featuring an embossed Justice League logo. I like the look of that. And we've got Superman on a front small silver placard, as you can see, that has like the galvanized steel sort of outer band of trim to it. These are nice looking display stands. I have one real problem with Superman's though. At the very top of the display stand, in fact, I'll just actually pop this right out. He does have the adjustable neck. I know we've seen these before. Nothing really has changed, at least not that I was aware of. If I unscrew the top, just like this, and I just put this to the side, just like this. Normally, when you do get these waist clip clamps, the idea is, of course, this is going to fit around the waist of Superman if you want to have him in a flight pose. If you look at it, I've taken the screw out completely, widening it as much as I thought I would need in order to clear fitting past this top section right here. But if you look at it, it still isn't wide enough to fit down the neck of the adjustable stand. I mean, if you put it down, that's as far down as it's going to go. All the bit of wishing, all the bit of hoping, it's not going to go any further past that. I'm wondering why they had to put this top piece right here, as we certainly have not. I don't recall seeing these before, because generally you can usually slide these down. There's no other alternative to it. You certainly can't do it from the bottom. So the top is really your only recourse, and yet it doesn't fit past that point. You can't even force it down. Literally, it's as high or as low as it's going to go. And that kind of stinks. I would have liked to at least have had that a little bit lower. I'm certainly going to see if I can have maybe check through some of my other Hot Toys accessories and see if there's one that has the same similar peg shape, that rectangular shape at the bottom. So I can find one that actually will allow me to move the waist clamp further past that point, because it really just seems excessively wasteful to give you so long of a neck, and yet the clamp has to stay at the top. You can't bring it down. Obviously, you can compensate it. I mean, this being an adjustable frame, you can just bring that down, but that really misses the point completely. If this couldn't go any further past this point anyways, why wouldn't they just have simply made a smaller length post as opposed to one that's so excessively long in the first place? I mean, Superman is in a flight pose if you want to be using this anyways, but it seems like it's really too high. I mean, it's about the same height as Superman. And without being able to lower that any further than what it is right now, it just seems like Superman's going to be really hovering quite higher up than the rest of the league, unless you, again, manipulate it and navigate this to at least a lower point. I just don't understand why the clamp couldn't have gone lower than this. You know, the irony also in the fact that the pre-order was delayed so long for Superman, it made perfect timing for this guy to come out and eventually be shipped to me around the time of the big announcement of Zack Snyder's Justice League cut coming to HBO. I couldn't be any bit more excited for that, because this is something I've been campaigning for the longest of time to see Zack Snyder's initial vision of what the film was intended to be. So in some ways, having Superman arriving at my doorstep right around that time that Zack Snyder's cut was announced, again, I couldn't have been any bit more excited. Now, looking at the figure, talking Snyder later, I could talk all day about Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, but the Superman figure is pretty much a reuse of the one that we had gotten before. Call me a fibber face? That's not nice. We can move him over just slightly, and we can bring in the Superman that came to us from Batman v Superman. Now, you will see, if you look at them side by side, they are identical figures, of course, without a color swap, of course, that's been changed to the figure. Darker, moodier colors represented here for the Batman v Superman version of Batman. More vibrant blue colors, the reds and the yellow, or combination gold-yellow. Much brighter, of course, on the new Justice League version of Superman. And just for fun, because of course I still have him, I would be keeping all my Supermans in my collection. I don't understand why one would want to get rid of one Superman when it's clearly from a different film, but nonetheless, this is the Superman, if I can get his feet to firmly plant. There we go, just bring his feet down a little bit. This is the Superman from Man of Steel. Still a great looking Superman. They're about the same height to one another. Ironically, again, here I go back to talking about ironically, Cavill's Superman was really quite tall when you compared it to, say, Christopher Reeve's Superman. And yet, when you look at all three of them together, they all share the same similar heights, the same similar builds. So it doesn't feel like the Man of Steel's Superman is outdated, simply because we got the newer releases on either side of him. Let's talk Superman's accessories, and he doesn't really have a lot to go through, so this should be rather quick. The first thing we'll have a look at is his hands. We'll move to the hand department first. Superman comes with a pair of relaxed palms. It usually comes, for me at least when it comes to displaying these figures, I never really display them with a closed fist. I find that really, really boring. Superman, you could kind of pull it off with his closed fist, but generally I like to display him with a pair of relaxed palms. And Hot Toys does in fact include a pair of relaxed palms for Superman. The hands themselves are nice. I mean, you got to imagine that these are hand painted. And so with that, you get those imperfections that you would normally find in skin anyways. Little flecks and speckles of alternate colors. Yeah, unfortunately, the fingernails aren't colored in. This would be difficult anyways. Fingernails generally are about the same color as your skin anyways, just slightly lighter. And I feel like if you were to color those a different color than the rest of the fingers, they would look artificial, stand out, and it would almost look like Superman's wearing nail polish. So we really want to kind of get away from that mindset. Usually, again, when it comes to displaying Superman, I'm going to display him with like hands like this, as opposed to closed fists. But if you also want to maybe put him in a flight pose, let's flip those around so they're accurate. He comes with a pair of flight hands. Or I guess they could be hands for maybe Kal-El asking for spare change. He usually generally has spare change on him, although really hard to find pockets on a suit like that. The hands themselves, like the relaxed palms, are decently painted. Again, yes, they're omitted on the fingernail department, but that's not something that I'm going to be disappointed by anyways. Next, he does also come with a pair of grabbing hands. Grabbing for perhaps when he gets resurrected. I'm going to be curious to see how Snyder approaches that. Certainly, we hope that Batman isn't going to be so much the wuss in Snyder's version as what we got with Whedon's version. Anyways, I digress. We're not going to talk too much about that. But he does come with a pair of grabbing, mauling hands, if you will. I guess this would be ideal if you want to give him one of the mother boxes you could have and hold in place, or if you want to make use of these, and if he wants to be battling, say, the Cape Crusader, you can do that as well. Again, nice the fact that they do include these hands. I mean, you can lock them together if you really wanted to as well. Superman could be contemplating life, deciding whether he wants to join in, and basically quickly defeat Steppenwolf. He really could have just done it all on his own. But those are basically the hands that come included with the figure, and along to go with that, Hot Toys also includes the alternate pegs, well, extra pegs at least. If you break ones that are currently in the sockets, or you happen to lose them, or they just are stubborn and they get stuck and stay with these existing hands, you've got a couple of extras that you can cheat by and just pull these from the bag. You only get 2 of them, so of course go sparingly. You don't want to go crazy with these, but it's nice the fact that at least Hot Toys includes them. For me, the real sell of this release is the fact that Superman finally gets an alternate head portrait that isn't just always so neutral. All the heads that we've gotten for Kal-El up to this point have all had sort of a shared expression. Obviously with this one here, the one I'm pointing at in the back, has the exact same head sculpt as the Batman v Superman. We'll talk about that in a second. So this one does break things up rather nicely. This one does also have an LED function. It's built in on the underside of the head, which I find is sometimes very tricky to get out. So I would suggest if you are looking to change the batteries out, all you have to really do is pop it onto the ball joint. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. The head sculpt, though, is really good. I like this one a lot. I don't know if I would actually display it, truth be told, with this particular Superman, but I am considering, obviously with these being the exact same head sculpt, this one here, to the one with Batman v Superman, I'm considering actually putting this one with the Batman v Superman. Obviously, I feel with Superman, at least, I get more angrier expressions from him for more the Batman v Superman line. Obviously, when it comes to Justice League, Superman is pretty ticked off that he gets resurrected, but the rest of the time he's still your average Boy Scout. So I probably will see myself displaying this head sculpt, this one right here, with the Batman v Superman release. It's got some nice coloring done to it. Obviously, it's a different face head sculpt altogether. It's got the nice, of course, heat ray vision, which I like the fact that also they added this slightly more bruised red around the areas of his eyes. There's even like little veins that are permeating out from his eyebrows, both in alternating reds and blues. Look at that. That is super, super cool. Or hot, I guess it would be. Again, you still got the imperfections to the skin, the blemishes you would expect to find, and even a little bit of stubble almost starts to make appearances on Superman's face. The teeth are done pretty good. I feel like maybe there could have been just a little bit of breakup to it because they seem like they're too, I don't know, they seem like they're too artificial in a way. I mean, from a distance, it's not so bad, but if they could have just added something different to the teeth, I don't know what it is. There's something jarring about his teeth. Again, from a distance, it's not so bad. Also with this particular head sculpt, it reminds me of something I sure will be talking about when we have a look at this one, is the fact that his hair, I feel, is still too light. I mean, Superman's hair is pretty much jet black in the film, and yet this head sculpt, obviously the light is helping it along the way, but kind of almost reads in hand more like a really, really dark brown-based black. I know, you're still thinking that's pretty close to black, but I would probably have gone even one step further and made this even a more dark black. The hair is pretty good, but I feel like it's, again, too close to being, well, it's not as shiny and dark of a black as certainly I would have hoped. The hair is nicely done, as well as the face on this alternate head sculpt. Well, let's go ahead. Talked certainly a lot about this already. I'll show you guys how this lights up by attaching it to the socket, or at least the neck, of the Justice League Batman here. Superman here. I must have Batman on the brain. We'll move Cavill's Superman over, floating in from a far-off reach. we'll bring in the Batman v Superman. You can see there's nothing different between them. Yes, paint has certainly been changed. I feel there's more contrast with the Justice League version of Superman than what we had gotten here with the Batman v Superman release. I mean, again, the sculpting is identical to one another. This would have been a prime opportunity, I feel, that Hot Toys could have given us a brand new head sculpt. That still being the case, I think the paint is a much better read here on the Justice League version of Superman than what we got here with the Batman v Superman, which is very much darker in skin tone. I do like the lighter contrast on the skin coloring here on the Justice League version, but you can see that they are identical to one another. We'll go ahead and just put this Superman down for the time being because, yes, we will be going back and revisiting him. You can also kind of, in the process of discussing this guy, sort of now be able to go back and forth and see the contrast between the two different costumes. Anyways, though, if you are looking to change the head sculpt out, all you have to do is just pop Superman's head off, just like so, wiggle it off the ball joint. And really what you do want is you want the ball socket to go along with the head. That's good. We're going to put that right to the side, and then we're going to go ahead and grab the new Superman head sculpt with, of course, the heat ray vision. Now, obviously, I haven't turned this on just yet. It is very difficult to kind of get your hand into it and pull it out. However, if you do pop it back onto the neck, and then you just remove Superman's head, it's a far easier opportunity to remove that than you trying to pry that out from the cavity of Superman's head sculpt. From there, you have basically a light source, which is, I mean, it looks kind of like a robot head. On the front here will be two very bright LED red lights. Now I'm going to do my best to point that away from you so that you guys don't have that shining in your eyes. And along the top, though, we've also got ourselves the battery compartment. This will be, of course, where you'll want to add the batteries installed into the top. And don't worry, Hot Toys does include those. You don't have to worry about going out and buying them. There's an on and off switch. This reminds me really a lot like the new Captain Marvel Hot Toys figures that we got as well. That had the alternate head sculpt that had that really cool mohawk. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and switch this on. Again, I did tell you that it was going to be extremely bright. Again, it kind of looks like a robot with its eyes. But what we are going to do, though, is we're going to take Superman's head sculpt, slide this over top, and you really aren't going to see anything just yet until we pop it down all the way. And now you've got yourself a very bright, effective looking look for Superman with his heat ray vision. What I do like about it, though, is it doesn't rob the figure. Let me just let me show you what I mean by that, not blind you in the process. When it comes to light up eyes, the hard part has always been in the past that when you do have a light up option in the eyes, usually the eyes then get sacrificed and they're not painted. A C-3PO, I know that's a weird thing to talk about here, but the Sideshow C-3PO had light up eyes. The downside, though, is if it wasn't always lit up, it was a pitch black eye socket. And Superman doesn't have that problem because they've already painted those eyes. You can really go with or without the heat ray vision actually lit up, those eyes right there. It's still just as effective. Obviously, I'm not going to have this running all the way on all the time on my display shelf. So I like the fact at least you have fully painted eyes. If you do want to turn on Superman's head sculpt, it's simply just, again, in case we just slide this off. That's what it looks like off, of course, and that's what it looks like on. Off, and then on. Again, it's really nice, effective look for Superman. Would I say necessarily it works with this particular Superman? Short of him flying down and blasting Steppenwolf, I don't recall Superman really using much of his heat ray vision in the film. So again, I'm probably going to see myself instead swapping this head sculpt out with the one that's in the back for the Man of Steel or the Batman v Superman instead. If you look at the two head sculpts, though, like I said, the hair is pretty much identical to one another. There really hasn't been much that's changed to it. I feel like there's a little bit more of an obvious curl on the one side versus the other one right here. The coloring is, again, about the same from one another. Really, again, going back to a talking point I mentioned before, I really would have loved if this was more of a jet black color versus the coloring that we got right here. It's a little bit too muted for my liking. Other than that, though, I'm really happy with both the head sculpts. Even though this is going to be the one I'm going to display with the Superman, I like the fact that at least that Hot Toys gave you an alternative for a Superman that's pretty much a re-release to the one that we had gotten before. And to also just prove to you, yes, you can swap out that head sculpt using it with the Batman v Superman body. The light up works the exact same way. wouldn't change in any way, and you can still get that heat ray vision working. I just feel it works a little bit better with this particular Superman. Again, for the big battle that he has with the armored bats, I think it fits better with this particular figure. The coloring is still pretty consistent. I mean, if you look at this and you look at his neck, the neck is still slightly darker, but it's not enough that when you look at the two, it seems off-putting, like this isn't the head sculpt that is intended for his body. Again, when it comes to displaying the figures, this is probably going to be the way that I'm going to go with. I guess in a way, it's beneficial, the fact that they pretty much just used one figure to the other, because along with that, it's the exact same neck, one's not longer than the other, and it's the exact same ball joint socket system, allowing you to swap out Superman's alternate head sculpt from this one and plant it instead on the shoulders of the Batman v Superman copy. Keeping with the theme of angry Superman for Batman v Superman, we're going to have a look at the two bodies, just so you guys can see that they are identical to one another. The Superman shield, the emblem on the front though, does appear slightly smaller on the Justice League copy than we had gotten here with the BVS. Trying to abbreviate that if possible. The bodies appear to be the exact same. The belt buckle on the front, done in a rectangular gold, seems to be a carryover, as well as the striping done on both the sides of his body, the sides of his legs, and the sides of his arms. There doesn't seem to be anything that's different between the two. As I said, other than really just the coloring, there's a close-up look at his boots as well. The boots seem also identical to one another. It really just boils down then to the coloring and the emblem being slightly smaller. Putting Superman, the other one here, back for a second, so again you can witness what it looks like with the alternate head sculpt. He does have somewhat interesting looking material for his new costume. Not only is it lighter in color, it still has that chainmail meshing done to it, which I was a big fan of in the film. But it does also have that same thing that the Justice League costume also possesses, and that seems to reflect the light. I don't know what they've actually done to the body underneath that, but it does seem like maybe they've added a lighter shade, and I'm not going to obviously attempt to try to remove the costume. I'll just remove that little bit of styrofoam. I didn't realize that was still in there, just on the under armpit of Superman. I'm not going to obviously remove that. I don't want to cause damage to the costume. But I feel like underneath all of this, the torso is probably a lighter silver color, something that reflects the light, similar to what he has in the film. He still has one problem. One problem that bothers me about this particular suit, or this particular look of Superman, and it works also the same issue with this one, is the jet-in bicep. Where the forearm is attached to the bicep, you've got a real sunken-in drop from where the two connect. And because it's a skin-tight costume, it follows the same form. It results in the arm looking really, really awkward looking, and it still allows Superman to bend his arm, so there's benefits in that. But if you have the arms completely straight, you've got this big, very noticeable section where the bicep goes straight in and then jets out again into his forearm. It did bother me as still when I had a look at the Batman v Superman copy, and I don't know, I feel like I looked at it and noticed it more on the Justice League copy. One other thing about this particular figure that, at least in my collection, is I've noticed in the areas of the shield, I'm going to tilt it slightly so hopefully you guys can see it, there are areas that seem like they're missing paint. They're small enough that at least they blend in from a distance. When you look at them really close though, it does seem like there are a few areas, like right there along the top, basically right here. I'm going to follow along my finger if you can. There's areas where it seems like the paint isn't completely finished on there, and that does lead me to one concern long term, that hopefully this paint isn't going to start flaking because this is printed over top of the costume. The cape still looks to be the exact same as the one that we had gotten before, short of maybe just being a slight bit lighter. I like also the way how this particular cape has a weight to it. It has a natural drop, which I really, really do like. And even though it doesn't have the more traditional Superman shield logo on the back done in yellow, I'm fine for the fact that the new modern take of the Man of Steel omitted that and gave him a nice long cape. It's always been one of my favorite capes. I really wish that the Batman had as good of capes as it seems that Superman. That's one thing that Superman does well in when it comes to the Hot Toy releases. I just feel is a better cape. It seems to be double stitched, two pieces of fabric stitched together. It has a little bit of elasticity. If you see, you can stretch it. But again, I really like the coloring, and I like the fact that there's some good significant weight on that particular cape. I mean, that was really the case anyways when we looked at the previous Batman v Superman copy as well. Looking at the figure's articulation now, his head rotates all the way around. It also hinges up and down. You can actually still pull off the same feats with the light up eyes, simply just because it works on a same ball jointed system. Nothing is limited or nothing is removed by having that be light up. But we're just going to look at this particular head sculpt for the rest of this review because I like this one a little bit more. As I said, though, the head moves up and down. You can get a nice high up tilt. You can also rock the head back and forth. Like I said, there's a lot of wiggle room when it comes to Man of Steel, or at least Superman's head sculpt here. You can rotate it, like I said, all the way around. His upper torso does have a nice crunch going for it. I don't know long term if that's going to start developing stress or damaged areas to the costume. But at least for the time being, he does have, like I said, quite a bit of articulation. It also helps, again, that he probably has that really thin costume that, like I said, there's a little bit more flexibility with what you can actually do with the joints. So yes, upper torso crunch. He's got the waist swivel. His arms hinge out not quite at a 90 degree, more closer actually to a 45 degree angle. And they can move forward and they can move back. Now, they are limited, at least when it comes to moving the arms forward. I had a real tough time moving Superman's arms forward. They seem to be really stubborn, and so much stubborn in the fact that I'm not really wanting to navigate and move them any bit more than what I've just already done. He does have that elbow bend, which, again, it does allow, at least the gap being as big as it is, allows the Superman arm to bend quite a good range, but man, it's just, I don't like the fact it sinks in as far as it does. Hands, whatever hands you decide to go with, do rotate all the way around, and they also hinge back and forth. Superman's legs split out. You have the swivel on the top cut of the thigh, very muscular looking leg, and again, I feel like the coloring underneath for the main buck body is probably not only very muscular, because this is all sculpted plastic underneath, but when you do move the costume, you can see that there's definitely some color variations that they've done to the body underneath, leading me again to believe that this is probably a lighter colored body and not simply just the regular flesh tone body that we normally see. I could be wrong by that. He does have a double hinge on the knee. That's good there as well. A nice rotation on the boots, and the feet go up and down, and you can also rock them back and forth. Just be very careful, of course, because Superman's feet, the way that they are, and they're encased inside the fabric boot, you want to be careful that you're not going to start developing stress lines here. This is sort of one of the problems that all the Superman figures seem to face because they're covered in a fabric boot. You always seem to have this really obnoxious wrinkle that happens right at the very top where the feet connect to the rest of the boots. It's something, of course, I can easily overlook because overall it's a good-looking Superman. While it does share a lot, and again, I do want to stress the fact a lot of the same similar components to the Batman v Superman, I do like that this one does have the color variation to it. I mean, honestly, I think in the costume in the film, I felt was a little too blue for my liking. My favorite Superman costume still is the one from Man of Steel, but I do think that there's some real positive points to be made on this particular Superman. That was a lot of P's. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, we'll just bring in, once again, the Batman v Superman, just again for wrapping up this review so you guys can see the difference between the two figures. Let's just get his feet to stand properly there. There we go. Again, you could look at the two figures and think awfully cheap on Hot Toys' part, simply just to give us the exact same figure that we had gotten before. At least the blessing is the fact that the costume is slightly tweaked. This one has a lighter color scheme, obviously, to the naked eye. And it seems to also have a case where the Superman emblem is a little bit smaller. The sell and draw also for this particular one, if you already had this one and really on the fence as to whether you want to invest into basically the exact same Superman yet again, this one also does have, like I said, those light up eyes. And that's pretty cool as well. Though ultimately it's probably going to find its final home here on the shoulders of Batman v Superman Batman, or Superman, there I go saying Batman again. So again, there's some merits to the fact of picking up this figure because you do have the alternate costume, the slightly lighter color schemed costume. And you do have the alternate head sculpt, which I do think they pulled off rather effectively, being able to light up those eyes and still not forfeiting the paint of the eyes. So if you did want to have the LEDs turned off, which is likely the way I'm going to be displaying the figure anyways, it doesn't look like he's just got these barren sockets where lights really should belong instead. The Hot Toys Justice League Superman. Now there was a figure that seemed to take forever for it to finally come out. There are still people actually waiting for their pre-order to be fulfilled, and if you head on over to Sideshow's website, for example, where I pre-ordered it, it's currently back onto a pre-order release, with a release now of being May to June 2020. It was really disappointing to constantly go back to my email, only to find notifications that the Superman was going to be delayed for a couple of months even further. And I can't even remember when I pre-ordered this guy. I want to say it was 2 to 2.5 years ago. So there was a lot of waiting involved to finish out the League. And even though we don't have Cyborg, I don't even know if the possibilities are going to surface now of a Cyborg, maybe with the Snyder cut now being a real thing. Maybe we may get ourselves eventually that Hot Toys Cyborg that we were promised. At least for the time being, we've somewhat finished out the League, with a Superman that, yes, does feel in some regards like a carbon copy to the one we got with Batman v Superman. At least to this one's credit, it has the lighter color scheme to the costume I was least favorite of in all the, of course, the films that had Henry Cavill in it. I just thought that there was too much reflective surfaces on this particular Superman's costume. I either like the Batman v Superman copy, or I do like the costume that he wore in Man of Steel, the more muted, matte colors. I think that's my favorite look for Henry Cavill's Superman. But at least this one does have enough elements to it that if you look at them side by side, you're not just thinking it's just a new re-release of the exact same figure with just a different display stand that doesn't really make sense in the first place because he wasn't on the Flying Fox. At least this one, again, does also come with the alternate head sculpt, and while it may not find the home, at least on the shoulders of this particular Superman, it's most definitely going to be finding its home on the Batman v Superman shoulders instead. I really like the head sculpt, and I like the fact that, again, you're not forfeiting anything by having that light source inside the head. We've seen times and time before where anytime you have light up eyes, usually when the eyes are turned off, it looks like just this vacant, empty, hollow shell of a head until, of course, those eyes get light up. At least Superman, to his credit, has painted eyes. So if you decide you want to display him without the light up heat vision, you can certainly pull off such a feat. Again, I'll be doing that with my Batman v Superman copy. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comment section. Were you guys also lucky enough to finally get this guy delivered to your doorstep? Or are you, unfortunately, one of the few that are still on the wait list, the pre-order list, for when this guy eventually comes out? Again, he seemed to take forever. Anyways, if you guys are fans of this content, enjoying the content that this humbled reviewer is putting out, thank you for that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and swing on over or fly your way over to the bell notification and turn that on. And stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of videos coming your way. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do, and I'll see you guys next time.